Hi, you're listening to a podcast from I'dRatherBeWriting.com. My name is Tom Johnson, and today I am talking about a recent post that I've written called 30 plus ways that I'm using AI in everyday writing life as a technical writer, blogger, and curious human. My website is I'dRatherBeWriting.com, and I predominantly write or primarily write on my site. And, I've been trying to do more podcasts. So this is a podcast version of written content. I don't just read it, by the way. All right. So here's the backdrop. Here's why I wrote this post. Basically, I feel like right now, everybody that I talk to about AI, well, not everybody, most of the people tend to have this same sort of scenario. They're feeling pressure to kind of implement AI. They've been hearing so much hype and news and buzz about how transformative AI is, and they want to incorporate it into their workflow. They want to take advantage of these benefits, but they can't, or they don't see how, or it doesn't work for them. And so there's this disconnect between all this hype and their own experience, if they've even, tried to do different things. So right now, a lot of people are asking this common question: what are the use cases for AI? It's great, right? Well, in what scenarios? Maybe I just haven't found those use cases. And in the past, I have presented some pretty concrete use cases for AI, but I've found that lately I have really been expanding the use cases. And there's a recent Cherry Leaf episode where Ellis Pratt is talking about how kind of like in the beginning of when computers were developed, or when the internet was coming into itself, a lot of people asked, well, what are computers good for? Like, sure, they're novel, they're kind of fun, they're interesting, but like, are you going to actually use them for anything? Same with the internet. When the internet was first kind of coming online, I think people were saying, well, this is cool, but what's it for? And then now it's like you do everything on the computer. You do everything on the internet. I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. I think people just use it in the same way they use a search engine, in the same way they use the internet, computers. It'll have so many different use cases. And so in this post, I want to kind of talk about all these different use cases. But before we get into this, actually, I wanted to play a little clip from this latest This Week in Tech podcast. By the way, this is one of my favorite shows. It's been around for a long time, like forever. It's hosted by Leo Laporte, although in this episode he's out. But one of the guests kind of perfectly encapsulated or expressed my own sort of use of AI. So I'm just going to play this. It's about a minute.
You, Rich, I'm super curious.
Well, I guess
you got your hands in a whole lot of different
out
things
here because I have gone 100% full in. I pay the $20 a month for ChatGPT. I've got a tab open on my computer at all times with multiple ChatGPTs. I've built my own. I actually did something kind of cool. So I took all of the transcripts from my radio show and I programmed them into a GPT. And so I can ask my own GPT what I've said about a topic. I mean, it's literally like my brain on a computer. Now, it's not very good right now. Like
I should know. I've also done the whole Chat GPT on my site, and it's kind of interesting as well. I haven't really talked about it, but definitely I've played around with this, and it's kind of fun. I put all my website content into this. I wanted to see, what have I said about wikis and crowdsourcing, I've totally played around with this, and like this host says, it's not great, but it's interesting to kind of see how you think about things. Anyway, let me get back to this.
definitely having some, like sometimes it'll get the answer right, and other times it just won't even come up with the answer. Same question.
Right.
So it's not there just yet. But when it comes to professional and personal, like I am using this like for everything. For my professional world, I mean, I get an interview, I transcribe it using AI. I'll have AI kind of pick out the highlights as my notes for that interview forever, in addition to what's in my brain. I don't use it to write things, obviously, because that's kind of like I can't really trust it to do that. But headlines, Instagram captions.
Same here about the whole writing aspect. I did have a post not too long ago talking about my experience trying to write with AI, and this post was actually featured on Hacker News, which is always kind of exciting. I talked about the process I was using here. It was more of like a experiment, and like this host, Rich DeMuro, it doesn't really, it's not great to use AI to try to write full-length human-sounding articles. It feels a little fake.
Pretty much anything where I want a creative partner on something, I will pull it. And you can't necessarily use what it comes up with immediately, but it's almost like this just creative friend. It's like a writer's room at like a TV show. It's like you have a bunch of people saying stuff, and it's just giving you all this stuff all the time. And you're like, huh, okay, that's interesting. And so I've got it on my phone. I've got the app. It's just great. I really am so impressed with the variety of things I find to do with it. Travel and shopping and ideas, just everything.
And the more you use it, are you finding?
All right. So I played that clip because I'm like this guy. That was Rich DeMuro. I think his handle was Rich on Tech or something on Twitter. But I find that I'm kind of a similar way. And it's a little weird because so many of the people I talk to, even if they're totally into AI, sometimes they'll say, oh, yeah, I don't really use it myself that much except for maybe this one scenario. Or, they just kind of dabble in it. And I'm like, how is it that I'm so in on this? How is it that I'm using it so much more? Anyway, here are 33 ways where you can experiment with using AI. And these are basically things I do pretty regularly. Create a readable version of a YouTube transcript. This is great. Like if you go into YouTube and you click on let me just go into something. If I go to youtube.com and let's say I see this video AI here, I'm like, is this going to be worth reading? Click the little more link, go over to, scroll down to the bottom. Wait a minute. Where's the transcript? Okay, well, maybe it's because usually there's like a transcript button here. Okay, there we go. Show transcript. I didn't scroll far enough. And then copy the whole transcript. Sometimes it's a little hard to copy. Paste this into something like Claude that accepts a larger input. And then ask it to write a summary. I usually say don't eliminate any detail, just make it more grammatical so that I can read it. And so on, and then I can glance at it really quickly, read it, and see if it's actually going to be worth sitting through 10, 20, 30-minute video. Understand difficult passages in a book. This is probably one of my favorite use cases. Let's say you're reading something like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which has a lot of kind of philosophy in it. And you get a passage that you're kind of perplexed about. Well, I have the ChatGPT app on my phone, but there's also Claude, I think Bard. Anyway, you can basically just speak the passage into your AI tool, or you could type it out and say, hey, I'm struggling to understand this. Can you kind of make it understandable? Can you include some concrete examples? I always like to add the examples because for me that's what makes things a lot more easy to understand. And it's great. So like if you're reading your phone or computer with a web browser open to one of these sites, can be a great way to better understand text. You don't just have to power through it. Create a custom tailored learning course. Let's say you want to learn some technical detail. Let's say you're a technical writer. You want to understand JavaDoc tags. What's the syntax maybe for link tags, and what are the other tags you should be using? Well, there's like basically no books that just cover JavaDoc tags. It's always a chapter in a larger book about Java programming. But you can have a custom course that it sort of creates tailored around this. It won't be incredibly long and in depth, but it'll probably suit just whatever needs you have. All right, number 4, summarize the main point of an academic article. I find that this is also very useful. And again, it's like the summary of the YouTube transcript, but academic articles can be really dry, tedious, long-winded. They kind of have a quality of not really saying anything and disguising it in a bunch of academic jargon and so on. And I find that if I say a prompt like, hey, summarize the main argument that the author's making here, break down the logic into crisp construction of the main claim, supporting reasons and evidence and so on, it really does a nice job at bringing it down to earth. I mean, I know a lot of articles have abstracts, but you'd be surprised at how much more readable the AI version of an abstract can be, or the AI summary can be, more than an abstract. A lot of times abstracts or summaries at the tops of articles are really just teasers for the article. Get grammar advice. This is also super helpful. I've got 2 number 4s here. Let's say that you're writing. And again, I think I find these AI tools so much more useful is because I'm doing a lot of writing. Not only am I a technical writer during the day, I have a blog on the side where I do a lot of writing. So I'm constantly writing. And getting grammar advice, super helpful. Like maybe there's 2 different options for style in a sentence. Maybe you're reviewing something and you want to know, is this right? Is this wrong? Why? You can totally get in-depth feedback about grammar and style, trade-offs, and so on. Another way to use it is to write full-length human-sounding articles. Now, I mentioned this one earlier, that basically, if you go paragraph by paragraph, and you say, hey, in this first paragraph, describe this idea, or write this, and so on, it can work. But I think in general, it's best used for just the explanatory and summary parts. And if you're writing kind of a personal essay where you have some ideas balanced with personal experience, you could have the AI tool write the more explanatory sections, and you write the personal experience and kind of blend them together. Could work. But yeah, this is probably better used in the context of TechCom, where you have documentation that's sort of voiceless. It doesn't have a byline. Nobody cares about who wrote it. They just care about its accuracy. Going to be a lot more successful. Increase interest in the world around you. The other day, I work in Fremont, right next to a ship canal, and a big shipping vessel passed by. It said, "Sea freeze, Dutch Harbor, Alaska." And I was like, I wonder what kind of boat this is. What kind of fish does it catch? Tell me some interesting details. So you could take a picture of the vessel or just type it in and, hey, tell me about this boat. What kind of fish does it catch? Tell me some interesting facts about Dutch Harbor, Alaska. And I do this all the time when I see things like, let's say you see a really interesting looking mushroom, or you see some other interesting text. You can really just kind of have a lens into the world, the physical world around you. You can also troubleshoot using pictures. Now, I believe this is going to be ChatGPT specific, but the other week, I was trying to winterize my sprinklers, and I opened the sprinkler valve box, and I looked at all the valves, and I said, which ones do I turn? And so I took a picture of it, uploaded it, and said, hey, I'm trying to winterize my sprinklers. Look at this image. Tell me which valves I need to turn. Okay, the responses weren't great, but I could see how in the future that could be really powerful. I do hope that I correctly winterized my sprinklers. I don't know. I turned a couple of valves that I thought were the right ones. All right, get ideas for what to eat from ingredients in the fridge. All right, you're hungry, you're not sure what to eat, so you open the fridge, you take a picture of it, and you say, hey, what can I eat for dinner? Now, I don't cook hardly ever, right? And I've only tried this a couple of times, but it is kind of fascinating. It's not great either, and I've never actually tried to make something from its suggestions, but the fact that it could even do it is kind of mind-blowing. But the larger idea is like, hey, I have a picture that I'm uploading, as long as it doesn't have a person in it. You can do some kind of analysis on it, and that's kind of fascinating. Number 9, see counter arguments to your position. Let's say that you're writing a post about a topic, and you're feeling pretty good about it. Well, hey, what's the counter argument? This is a great use case. You totally can see the other perspective that helps you balance your thinking more, and you can anticipate how you would respond and provide more kind of well-rounded argument that takes into consideration some opposing points of view. Getting images for a post. This is super easy. I mean, if you haven't figured this out yet, and you have to prepare slides for anything, this is basically what I do now. I just paste in a paragraph of something I've written and set to ChatGPT's DALL-E integration and say, hey, get me an image that expresses the idea here in this section. And it's usually a pretty decent one. I mean, that's obviously what the image at the start was. I think I pasted this whole post in and I said, I need an image that expresses this idea, right? And yeah, I mean, I think most people who've played around with ChatGPT's DALL-E image generator immediately recognize this, and maybe it'll become cliche, but heck, sure beats trying to get an image by drawing it from scratch or finding another like stock photo. All right, troubleshooting technical issues. Number 11. I was trying to fix some validation errors in my podcast feed a while ago, and I totally used ChatGPT and Claude and Bard and I don't know what else to fix it. It was pretty amazing. Basically, I would paste. Hold on, I got a timer going off. 1 second. All right, so I was explaining that basically I was trying to fix some validation errors in my podcast feed. So what I did is paste in the error, but also paste in part of my feed as well, and would say things like, hey, here's the error message and here's my feed. How do I fix it? And it was actually really easy to address most of the things. But you can troubleshoot technical issues of any kind. You've got an error message, and that's like one of the best starting points to troubleshooting. Number 12 here, fix a poorly written paragraph. Let's say that you're writing and you've got a paragraph, you know that it's not worded the best way, and you're too lazy to kind of try to fix it. You can paste it into an AI tool, get a response back, and you can immediately see how it's different. It's a lot better to paste in specific sentences and paragraphs rather than like an entire article, because with the paragraph you can easily see what's changed. If you paste in everything, you can't really see what's changed. Number 13, find research. Let's say that you're writing about something, you want to find some solid academic sources. So you can say, hey, I'm trying to find research about X topic. Browse the web to find substantial academic articles that discuss this. And you can really try to get it working for you. Again, I think this is maybe I've got the like ChatGPT integration, and I believe this feature of browsing the web has the sort of Bing component. So I'm not sure if that's a paid paid part of ChatGPT Plus if you don't have like Bing on the Edge browser or something. But anyway, these tools like aren't just limited to whatever's in their training data. I think the Bing component will search and kind of get a bunch of results and read them for you and so on. All right, number 14, offload any writing you don't really care about. Okay, so again, coming back to this ethical scenario of having the AI write for you. There's a lot less at stake here if it's just like a tech doc at work that doesn't really have a byline, right? You're not worried about voice. You're not worried about, oh, is this coming off as fake or not transparent? No, it's like documentation is supposed to be kind of authorless. And again, as long as you review it with SMEs and you're not just like blindly pushing out stuff you have no idea about, it can work. Number 15, write code for documentation related processes. This is probably my biggest win, is automating some build and publishing tasks related to API documentation generation and kind of publishing. A sample prompt might be, hey, help me write some shell scripting for a documentation generation process. I want you to write a script that does the following, and then write some pseudocode. Run the command foo, capture foo's output as a variable called foo_output, and using foo_output, pass this into this other command called bar as a parameter. Obviously, I'm generalizing it, but you get the idea. You write some pseudocode, you tell it the language, and you can be on your way, especially if it's something you can easily test here. And you go component by component rather than trying to tackle some huge process all at once. You can have a lot of success with this. Number 16, distill needed updates from bug threads. I do this as well a lot. An engineer points you to a bug, says, hey, we need you to write documentation for this issue, and what is the issue? Oh, here it's in this thread, and there's 75 comments, and they're all over the place, and they reference like tech docs that are multiple pages long. Well, you can gather all this up, paste it in as context, and say, hey, from the following thread and related information, describe the issue and the resolution taken. And you can kind of query against this. And this is, now, I also recommend that you actually read through the bug and the thread. But if you already have in your mind what it's about, and you've got kind of a guide, it's like having Cliff Notes before reading the book. It's a lot easier. You don't have to try to piece it together. And you can easily verify whether it's on target or not. Number 17, create article summaries. I do this all the time. I have as my blog a short summary at the top. Let's see this one. Yeah, this little summary of the post. I saw this technique used on Nielsen Media blog like 10 years ago. I really liked it, and so I baked it into the format of my blog. But I hate writing these summaries. They're hard. And I'll often ask AI to write one, to kind of create a first draft, and then I'll edit it quite a bit from there, usually. So summarizing things is one of the superpowers of AI, and it definitely works in many different scenarios. Okay, jumping down here. Number 18, synthesize insights from granular data. Let's say you have a lot of little pieces of data, and maybe you have 50 quotes. Maybe they're quotes from a book. Maybe they're quotes from user feedback. Maybe there are other items. You want to synthesize larger themes, figure out what the larger message is. Basically, affinity diagramming if you're in UX. You could say a prompt like this, or you could write a prompt based on the following content, identify some major themes from whatever. I do this for book notes for my book club that I have at work. I'll put together a lot of quotes and maybe book reviews and other content and try to use all these different pieces of information as a source and then try to extract insights from it all. or try to extract larger themes in a more general way. Okay, number 19, arrange content into information type patterns. Now, this is a technique I thought would be more popular. I almost never use it, but I know some people are really into this, and it's part of the whole prompt engineering strategy. Basically, you provide a lot more guardrails around your prompt, or maybe not guardrails, a lot more instruction around your prompt. You say, hey, you're a tech writer creating documentation, specifically a task. You follow a list of rules and you arrange information into a given template. And the task you are writing is whatever, how to make a basic API call. And then you have a section that has maybe the rules. Here are the rules for writing tasks. A task should be step-based, and it should have short sentences and focused ideas, and you should have like a result at the end, and so on. And then maybe you have a template. Say, hey, you want to start with prerequisites, and then a task title, and then steps, and then the result. And then finally instruction. Now make the following content fit into the task template above, and you paste in a whole bunch of unstructured content that you've gathered somewhere. And these tools, AI tools, are great at classifying information and making it fit the template that you provide. That is also kind of a superpower. Now, this assumes that you actually have a bunch of unstructured content with correct information that has like the answers, right? If you just say, hey, write a tech doc for this topic, and you want the AI to sort of guess from its training data, it's probably not going to work out for you. All right, number 20, format content. It could be HTML, XML, YAML. I do this all the time. In fact, I was doing this today. I had a table, something was wrong with it, things weren't lining up correctly. I didn't really want to sit there and try to figure out which table row tag I'd messed up. Paste in the table into an AI tool, say, hey, something is wrong with it. Please tell me what the error is, or fix it even. And it works great. Now, the table has to be somewhat short. If you have 150 rows or 300 rows, a lot of times the responses now are sort of like being truncated. Anyway. All right, number 21, compare API responses. Now, this isn't something I've done too much, but I did see on somebody's blog that they were using this technique, and it seems useful. But let's say that you are documenting an API, and you want to know if the responses that you're seeing from the API, let's say you're using a tool like Postman or curl, you get a big long response, has maybe dozens, 100 fields or something, and you want to see if like all these fields compare against the documentation in harmonious ways. Are the field names the same? Are all the required fields present in your sample response? This kind of comparison between two things, your actual response from your test data with your documentation, could be illuminating. You maybe will identify discrepancies or inconsistencies. 22, draft glossary definitions. Let's say that you want to build out a glossary, or let's say you don't even know what terms to define. You've written a tech doc. You can just paste it into an AI tool and say, hey, what are some words that would be good to include in a glossary that might be more specialized? And it will pick them out. Maybe you've become blind to this jargon. And again, using its superpower of summarization, it can easily summarize the description of that term as a definition. I think it does this really well, especially if it's a more general term, like not a term that's unique to your company. Any kind of knowledge that it can find on the web, it will do really well at that. Number 23, get quick answers about clickbait articles. I do this a lot as well. Again, this is this whole summary superpower. Let's say you're browsing the New York Times and you see an article. It says, maybe in the op-ed section, the very good reason people like George Santos lie about nonsense. And you're like, what is the reason? Like I don't want to have to read through the article, and I click the link and the answer is not in the first 3 paragraphs. And I'm like, okay, this is really annoying me. Now I often just paste in the article into Claude, and I say, hey, provide a crisp summary of this article and explain the answer that sort of corresponds to this title, and figure out if it's worth reading. Most of the time, it's not really worth reading. All right, 24, summarize hacker news threads. Here again is an excellent use case. Hacker news threads can be long. And I often want to know just kind of what the gist is, especially if like the article doesn't seem that noteworthy, but it has a long conversation thread under it. This is a great way of just kind of getting the highlights and the gist of things in a quick way. All right, number 25, explain something in a simpler way. I think this is one of the superpowers of AI as well, the ability to take a complicated concept and really make it understandable. This happened to me the other day. Somebody sent me kind of a cryptic message that said, hey, this is not a resource-based API. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought all cloud APIs had resources. I thought that was like the whole thing about, you apply methods against resources and so on. But no, so anyway, pasted this into an AI tool. I said, hey, help me understand this. And yeah, it worked really well. I totally got an idea of what they were saying. But you can use this in almost any aspect or any facet where you want something simplified. It does a great job. This is like on par with the importance of summaries, the ability to simplify. Especially if you say things like, add some concrete examples to clarify this. The more examples you add, the more understandable it gets. But this is definitely one of my top 10 use cases. All right, number 26, convert this proto file and engineering doc into something that resembles partner-facing documentation. Proto files are kind of like the source files that make up an API for APIs that are kind of RPC-based APIs. Anyway, not important. The important part is that, or the important aspect here is that these proto files contain a lot of the information about how the API works. All the reference documentation is generated from comments in these proto files. So basically, if you have a proto file, you can paste it into an AI tool. Now, when I say paste it into an AI tool, I should add a little note here to say, look, if you're working with confidential material, make sure you follow your company's AI policies about what tools you can use, like what information policies you can use. What am I trying to say? What you're allowed to do with AI and the information that you have. Many companies have very strict guidelines, and I don't want to encourage anybody to paste their confidential information into a tool that then they later find is kind of breaking their information security policies. So in my case, there's certain AI tools that we're allowed to use, and I would paste the proto file into these tools. Now, I didn't really give the tool that much instruction about what I wanted. Something that resembles partner-facing documentation is pretty vague, but it did a pretty good job at this, and more than anything, it did a nice job at helping me understand the big picture of the proto file and the API. Kind of like what's it doing. This is really how I'm using AI tools in general. I'm using them to learn, using them to really understand things, which enables me to write about them. Number 27, understanding API example code. Let's say that you're documenting this API. You want to have some usage code that explains how to use it for certain scenarios. And you reach out to an engineer. They just give you a bunch of code, and you're like, I sure wish I understood this better. Or you want to understand certain syntax in the code. Well, you can paste the code into your, again, approved API AI tool and use a prompt like, hey, can you explain this code? What is it doing? Break it down and explain each of the individual parts. You can even add a tagline if you really want it kind of simplified. You can add a tagline like, I'm not an engineer, so make the explanations easy to understand. Doing this, be warned, will make it a little bit kindergarten-y. if that's a word. So basically, beware of this. But you can definitely get it simpler if you want, or you can build back up the more technical explanations. I use this all the time. Well, not all the time. I use it enough to make it very worthwhile. And I love having the ability to just kind of have another source to explain what's going on with code. And sometimes I think, yeah, this is something I should explain in the documentation. Other times I'm like, oh, now that I see what's going on for a developer user, this is kind of obvious. But either way, I want to understand what's going on, and this is a great way to do that. These are just some ads on my blog. All right, number 28, find out whether a book is worth reading. I have a subscription to O'Reilly Books. I was looking for books on troubleshooting and problem solving the other day. Like half a dozen came up, and I just pasted the introductory chapter into Claude.ai, and just wanted to get a better summary. And you can even add a lot more detail to your prompt. You can say something like, the following is an introductory chapter of a book I'm considering reading. Provide a detailed summary of the chapter and what the book's about, but then add some more information like, let me know whether this book would be of interest to someone like me who does technical writing and who's interested in techniques for problem solving in technical domains, and so on, and then paste in the chapter. I really love the ability to add all this extra detail. This is one major way that these AI tools differ from like search engines. Search engines, your query is a lot more precise and short, succinct. But with the AI tools, oftentimes you can have a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, more detail, more context, the better answers you can sometimes get. Number 29, find supporting quotes or anecdotes from a book. Let's say that you're writing an article about a book you read, and you happen to have the PDF of the entire book. Well, you can probably paste it into a tool like Claude.ai that has a ton of input source capability. Like you can paste a 300-page book into it. And then now you've got primary material from which you can find quotes, anecdotes, parts of the book that you remember, parts that you want explained, and so on. In this case, I was looking for quotes from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that supported certain ideas or themes or anecdotes related to certain themes, and it was great to have this source to query against. Now, not every book is something you're going to have a PDF about, but if you do, especially if it's a classic, it can be very, very useful. All right, number 30, ask curious questions while eating rather than scrolling news feeds, right? So let's say it's lunchtime and everybody's on their phone, or you're riding the train and everybody's on their phone. You see people scrolling, you see the thumb moving and moving. This can get very tiring, scrolling news feeds. So if you're bored, try this instead. Ask a curious question. Maybe you're thinking about some topic and you want to sort of engage in this artificial intelligence partner for your time in the cafeteria, your time on the train. Because I was just reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I posed this question. Can you solve technical problems through meditation? Describe the theory and approach for this. And it was kind of fun. Kicked off a little discussion, got a little philosophical, learned about different ideas and movements and so on. And, you may think, oh, this is weird to be doing this while you're eating lunch. But everybody around you is either engaged in conversation with their friends, or they're just looking at their phone and are oblivious to the world around them. Even if they do look at you, it looks like you're having a chat on the phone with your family or friends or something. They don't realize you're talking to a bot. But it can be entertaining to do this. 31, identify weak parts of a proto file, undocumented fields, weak definitions. You'll notice that I'm just going in kind of random order because part of my point is that the use cases encompass almost every aspect of life. It's not as if they're just technical writing use cases or blogger use cases or, I don't know, bike repair use cases or something. And you can really just integrate AI into many different facets of your of questions, problems you're troubleshooting. It's kind of like that writing partner in the room. Anyway, this is a major use case. So paste in a proto file and say, hey, are there any fields that are undocumented? Any definitions that are weak? And basically ask it to assess the proto file to identify problems with it. And this can be very useful. It can really easily highlight things that aren't documented or things that are documented in a very poor way, cursory way, where the definitions just sort of repeat the field names. I did this prior to a meeting, and the AI tool identified some fields that weren't very well documented. And as we got to discussing it, it was very clear that these would probably be the most important fields that partners would want to know about. And so it was a great preparation for a discussion that we had. All right, number 32, solve complex problems related to parenting. Yeah, I started to just really add in things from all over the place. Let's say that you've got an ADHD child who struggles with homework, right? And maybe you're at a crossroads about the right discipline versus support and so on. Well, you could throw in a prompt there. I'm trying to help my daughter who has ADHD complete her homework, and here's all the details. You can get very specific, like I said. And based on the response, you can then add your question again to go and take it in another angle or to expand in more detail. And from that response and so on, you have a back and forth. That's really the beauty of these tools, is that whereas a search engine, it was mostly like a search and you get results. Maybe you refine your search and you get different results. But now you're practically in a conversation with an AI tool, and you can really get in depth and get tailored information, highly customized to the exact details you're adding in there. Okay, number 33, the last one. Get the latest weather or news. This is a scenario I actually just added because I was playing around with it today, and I didn't even realize you could do this. This is using ChatGPT with Bing. I believe this is the paid version if you've got GPT Plus, or if you're like actually just using Bing, I guess, on a Windows machine. Not sure. At any rate, if you use a prompt like browse the web to get the weather report for this week, or browse the web to get the latest NFL sports news for the past 2 days, you actually get responses, and it's pretty on target. I realize this gets into some more ethical stuff I don't really want to dive into here, but definitely the ability for some of these tools to crawl the web in real time, even if it takes a minute or two to gather and read and process all that information, can be useful. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as the use cases I wanted to cover. Again, this is 30 plus ways I'm using AI in everyday writing life as a technical writer, blogger, and curious human. My website is I'dRatherBeWriting.com. I mostly write about topics related to technical writing, TechCom, software documentation, API documentation. I've got a whole bunch of posts on AI. If you click the AI button here, the AI link. I've even got some more info in my API doc course under this section called AI Tools and API Documentation. And I've added links to some of those where relevant in these use cases here. Again, my site is I'dRatherBeWriting.com. My name is Tom Johnson. Thanks so much for listening.